Now, Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
Welcome to Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. We are speaking with guitarist Adrian Vandenberg. As we say in Montreal, bonjour. And you are being in France, you would understand that. So bonjour.
Yeah, bonjour, Mitch.
Yes.
Probably the goofy accent too. I got to work on my Inspector Clouseau accent.
Let me ask you that. Since you are in the south of France these days, do you actually have a conversational French, or do you sort of do like an American tourist and just force them to speak English to you?
Let's do the English thing. Yeah, I speak. I can get by in France and in French.
Yep.
And but I assume it still sounds funny to the locals over here.
To the locals, of course. We are here to talk about this album. Hopefully, whoops, there we go. Vandenberg 2020. Talk to me a little bit about sort of restarting the band, but also, let's be honest, it's a business. We're restarting the brand.
Well, yeah, it was a combination of factors. As some people may know, I had a band called Vandenberg's Moon Kings over the last 5 years. We had a fantastic time, a great bunch of guys, are really good friends. The practical problem was that our vocalist Jan Hoving, a very good friend of mine, he's got this huge farming company, so he couldn't really be out of the country for more than 1 or 2 days, and that basically stopped us from being able to tour internationally, and I really started missing that. And because, you know, I've always enjoyed being a little bit of a rock and roll gypsy and travel everywhere. I played for people, you know, different cultures, and eat croissants in French, in France, and weird stuff in the Middle East, you know. So yeah, that was a thing. And the other thing was that I noticed when I started writing for the second Moon Kings album, that I had a pretty natural tendency to work again towards heavier stuff than I did with Moon Kings, because that was a blues rock, more of a blues rock based band, you know, with a little bit more melody. So the combination of those two, especially the touring thing, I talked about it to Jan, and he told me he wasn't ready to leave the farm behind yet, you know. And then I talked to my manager and my record company, and they both suggested, why don't you use the name Vandenberg again? And I said, well, you know, I don't want to give an impression that it's a nostalgic type of thing, because it's not meant that way. And so I said, you know, give me a couple of days and I think about it, you know. And then I started thinking to myself, well, if I can find an incredible singer and put together an incredible lineup, then it makes sense, because then you've got a brand new, fresh, dynamic band with a name that has a heritage. So that was, for me, suddenly a pretty natural decision, actually, because, you know, it's a pretty good name, I suppose. My dad would agree.
It's a great name. Now, of course, you picked up Ronnie Romero, who has done stuff with Richie Blackmore's Rainbow. He's done stuff with Corleone, a band out of Switzerland called Gothard. They you know, Leo Leone went off. I think Leo's a fantastic guitarist. I thought that was a great project. Here's the fun thing about Ronnie. He says that it was the Whitesnake Stalkers in Tokyo album that got him wanting to sing. You know, the album that never should have happened, you know, ends up being this classic. Talk to me about picking up Ronnie, and what was it about his voice? Because he can do the Rainbow stuff, he can do the Gothard stuff, he can do pretty much anything he wants with that voice.
Yeah, he's a fantastic singer, and that's actually talking about Richie Blackmore. First of all, if something's good enough for Richie Blackmore, it's more than good enough for me. One of my heroes, of course, you know. But a couple of years ago, probably about 6 years ago or something, I read somewhere that Blackmore wanted to do a bunch of Rainbow shows, and I was quite surprised, because Ron James Dio has always been one of my favorite rock singers, and I thought, wow, it's got to be quite a singer to be able to handle that material and those chansons. And So I went on YouTube and I saw Ronnie do an amazing job. I thought, where the hell does this guy come from, you know? So I looked him up and I sent him an email to congratulate him, a short one, on the gig, and wish him a lot of success in the future. And that was it. I got a message back right away that he really enjoyed my work and thanks for the wishes and stuff. And who knows, we would shake hands somewhere down the road. So that was it. And when I started thinking about putting a Vandenberg lineup together, the first guy who popped in my mind was Ronnie, because like I told you before, it only made sense to me if I could find an incredible singer. And so I sent Ronnie a mail again, just asking what he was doing, you know, and if he was really busy full time with Blackmore or not, because I haven't really followed the other stuff that Ronnie has done in the past, because I'm a little bit of a musical hermit, so to speak. I don't really keep an eye on what's going on that much in the world, apart from great new bands, you know, whether it's Rival Sons or Foo Fighters or whatever, you know. Those are relatively new, of course, but not very new.
Yeah, Dave Grohl's gonna love you that you said he's a new band. They've been a new band for what, 15 years?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. You know, that shows pretty much, that kind of proves what I said. You know, I don't really keep an eye on it that often. And so anyway, when Ronnie wrote me a mail back, you know, let's talk. So I flew to Madrid, where he was living at the time, and we had a great connection right away. And I went back home, started writing songs that I wanted to tailor to Ronnie's voice, because that's what I always do when I write, you know, because I want to get the best out of the vocals, and then everything else should follow its natural flow, I suppose. And a couple of months later, or actually 2 months later, I flew back to Madrid and we recorded a couple of iPad demos on the songs that I'd written, and it went great. And before we knew it, we were in Los Angeles recording an album with Bob Marlette. So yeah, everything fell together, and I found an amazing Dutch drummer and bass player in Holland that I didn't know beforehand. Actually, to be sure, I wasn't really, to be clear, I wasn't really convinced that I would find people in Holland, which is why I approached my good friends Rudy Sarzo and Brian Tichy to make sure that I had a great rhythm section on the album. In the end, you know, I found Koen and Randy, the drummer and the bass player, a couple of weeks before we went into the studio. So Rudy and Brian were good sports, and they were fine with just playing a couple of tracks, you know.
Yeah, you gotta love Tishy and Rudy. So let me talk. You bring the band back. You're convinced that okay, you've got the right singer, you've got the right players. Musically, do you sit back and think, okay, it's got to be 1984 all over again, or do you say no, it's 2019, it's 2020, I'm starting it up again. We'll play those old songs in concerts, but I've got to make new music, new style, new, you know, do you expand what Vandenberg does, or do you look back and go, okay, we fans loved what I did 30 years ago, let's give them that again? How do you sort of approach the musical style?
Interesting question. You know, it's I didn't really think about it too much, because in rock and roll I never really believe in formulas or methods or something. When I pick up a guitar, the music flows out of my fingers and my heart naturally. In this case, it was even more natural, because I thought, you know, with a singer like Ronnie, there's no limitations. And I did realize, which kind of makes sense, you know, that there is a connection with the harder early Vandenberg songs like Waiting for the Night, This Is War, Fighting Against the World. And of course, you know, we re-recorded Burning Heart, which was a story in itself, because I didn't really mean it to be on the album. But my record company convinced me it should be on the album.
Oh, those horrible record companies always doing stuff. No, but But okay, let me just quickly ask you about Burning Heart then, because you did say you didn't want to be a nostalgia act. You know, at the beginning you said, I don't really want to be a nostalgia act, but you do that classic song. Does that sort of, is it a nod to the past and you updated it, of course?
Yeah, it's more like that. It was intentionally meant to be a demo because, or a demo, I mean, when the record company put out a press release that this was going to happen, it's about 5-6 months ago or something, my manager rightfully said, well, you know, a press release is a press release. Everybody and his grandma puts out a press release these days. So it would be a much stronger message if there would be music with it. But we didn't go into the studio yet, so we had no music. And then I realized with at the time with drummer and bass player of Moon Kings, we recorded basic tracks for Burning Heart with the idea in mind that our friends in Japan always would like to have a bonus track on the album that isn't on any other release. You know, it would make sense because they don't want the competition of import records, because I suppose those are usually cheaper. I don't know, but
yeah, they are. They're about 3 times cheaper. From, at least that's what Japanese friends have told me, that the imports are 3 times cheaper than the domestics.
Oh, there you go. So it
okay,
makes sense.
yeah.
So what I did is, you know, I finished the guitar parts, and when I flew to Madrid, Ronnie sang his amazing vocals on it, and he did 2 passes, and I had goosebumps on my arm, you know, which is interesting because, well, as you can imagine, I've played the songs, that song a million times, and I've never played it on automatic pilot. It's always an adventure, even you know, even if it's the same song, and it's pretty much, I stay very close to the solo. But you know, when I'm on stage, I feel the music that I'm playing, and I don't really want to think about it. So when Ronnie started singing it, it became like a completely new experience to me, because he sings it in his style, you know, with his emotion, and he's a very emotional singer. He puts his heart out, you know, in every performance, which everybody can hear. So I was very happy with it as a, you know, demonstration with the press release. So for me, that was it, you know. But when my record company said, why don't you put it on the album, you know, because we really like it, I said, well, you know, that would be, like you said already, a bit of a nostalgia type of thing for me. But when I thought about it, I thought, well, it is a nice bridge between Vandenberg 2020 and Vandenberg early 80s. So in that regard, it made sense. And
Total
so
sense. Total
I was
sense.
easy.
Yeah, it makes total sense, and I'm glad I have it. And to hear Ronnie's vocal on it is just fantastic. And the fact that he's able to handle a song like that and give it a great vocal, handle the rainbow stuff, and do the you know, handle the goth. The guy's incredible. I do want to ask you about some other stuff. Let me just go back in a little bit into the history. Somewhere around 94, 95, I guess, you're on tour with Whitesnake, and Warren DeMartini of Rat comes in. You've got Denny Carmassi on drums. Who was on bass? Was it Marco Mendoza? Was it Mendoza?
It was meant to be Marco Mendoza, but unfortunately his dad passed away, so he couldn't really leave. We had Tony Franklin on bass, which was great.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, great guy, great player, a lot of fun, and we had a fantastic time. That was actually no, wait a minute.
Must have been 94.
That was the 97 tour. Rudy Sarzo was still. Yeah.
Oh, Rudy, that's right. That's right. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So, but talk to me a little bit about that in terms of having Warren in there. Now you're, you know, you're 2 sort of, you know, lead guitarist guys, and you have to sort of assume new roles. What was it like having him in there and having that sort of give and take with a guy who can really play circles around almost anybody? I mean, you're both fantastic players, but my God.
Yeah, Warren is a great player and a great guy. So I was very happy to to share the stage with him. As it sounds like you know him. You know he's a very easygoing guy. You know, we just sat down and said, "Well, you want this, you want to do that." You know, it's all fine, and we had a great time. I've really enjoyed his playing ever since Red. So it was. I think we made a nice balance between the two of us. But to be honest, I felt that way with Steve Vai and Vivian Campbell as well. You know, as people know, up until then, I never had experience with sharing the guitars with another player. But at the same time, I grew up on Allman Brothers and on Thin Lizzy and whatever, you know, so I did enjoy it, and it turned out just a great experience.
Yeah, and quickly that the whole Thin Lizzy dual attack thing is just fantastic. Restless Heart. We've talked about it many times. I interviewed David twice in the last month or in the last couple of months. He's talked about how this sort of Restless Heart box set is coming out, or a re-release. I know you flew down to, I guess, Utah at the beginning of this year, or maybe in 2019. What can you tell me about the upcoming re-release of Restless Heart, and did you sort of sweeten up the guitars at all? Did you do some re-recording?
No, not really. Joel added an extra rhythm guitar on the album,
right?
And that it got remixed. What is his name again? I only met him once, so I don't know.
Oh, the guy. Hold on, the guy who's remixing stuff. Let me tell you that would be Christopher Collier.
Yeah, I had him on the phone a bunch of times.
See?
And great guy, great mixer, you know. So it sounds great. I'm very happy the album finally comes out, because at the time, David, if I remember it well, David just left Geffen Records, and subsequently the record only came out in Japan and Europe, because in Europe David was still with EMI, as you know, all the way in his whole history, I suppose. So it never got released in the States. So I'm happy it is now, you know, because I'm still very proud of the album.
It's a great album, and I've joked about this many times, but I love the fact that it was called David Coverdale and Whitesnake, and it's just like, David Coverdale is Whitesnake, not and Whitesnake, is Whitesnake. In terms of Vandenberg, you know, you have the new lineup, you have the new album, you're ready to tour, you're ready to get out there, and then this pandemic hits and shuts everything down. How much of a impact does that have on the band? Obviously, it kills momentum. Do you just sort of wait it out, or do you go back in and make a second album and say, okay, well, we've got, 20 songs that we can choose from now? What is sort of the game plan? Because the original game plan got shot down pretty quick.
Yeah, it did. Originally, like everybody, it looks like everybody had the same knee-jerk reflex reaction when this whole thing came down, to postpone their album release. And we decided, well, everybody's going to postpone it, you know. Everybody's going to be bombarded by records at the end of the year. At the same time, nobody could predict it was going to take this long, you know, or what it would turn out to be. But we decided, you know, we're going to put it out. People are going to be at home. They're going to need some new music, you know, and rock out and stuff. And so we did put it out. Since I'm a hardcore optimist, I thought, you know, as far as the touring goes, of course it sucks, because normally we would be playing festivals right now, but we're not, you know. So, and nobody's playing, and that sucks, of course. But at the same time, it gives us an opportunity for people to get used to the album and to check what it's all about, you know, before we start touring, which is pretty cool, because as you've noticed, and a lot of other people too, it is quite different from early Vandenberg, even though it's got connections, but it's a shitload heavier, and you know, it's different players. It's incredible singing by Ronnie. So yeah, it's a different deal, and we do have a UK tour planned in November, December. Although I'd be surprised if touring can be done by then, and if not, it's going to be postponed until the beginning of 2020, and then we're going to tour all over Europe. And
2021, you mean?
yeah, sorry,
Right.
2021. I mean, 2021 sounds like science fiction anyway. You know?
I know. I know. And yet here we are still talking about music from the 80s. I mean, it's fantastic.
Yes, yeah.
Do you start working on a second album? Because you're sort of sitting around doing nothing, and you know, most of us have a home studio thing. You can certainly punch out.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the reasons why I escaped to the south of France, is to start working on new songs. Might as well, you know. In the meantime, I never get bored anyway, because I got to catch up with my painting. I got to catch up with cooking and friends and family and all that stuff, you know. Life is good, you know. I always tend to make the best out of it. For me and probably a lot of fellow musicians, it's not, apart from the touring thing, it's not that big of a huge difference, because normally for me, you know, I'm home working on music or on paintings or making a pizza or whatever, you know, hanging out with my friends and my daughter and, you know, whatever. But of course, you know, I'd rather be touring right now. So yeah, I'm working on a couple of songs actually as we speak. I just started, and we'll see. I think we'll, because of these circumstances, we'll come up with a new record a lot sooner than we normally would have.
Yeah.
Which has got its advantages too, of course.
Yeah, and by the way, I think you were right in putting it out now, because a lot of fans are at home and they have this they have nothing to do. So let's listen to music, let's watch some Netflix, and in 2021, all these albums that were delayed, there's going to be like 100 albums released in January, and it's not going to be found. So
yeah, exactly. And also I noticed, because I've done more than 100 interviews over the past couple of months, that probably wouldn't have happened either, you know, because I mean, that many, you know. First of all, the journalists, since there's not that many releases, a lot of journalists didn't have that much to write about music, you know, about releases and stuff. And that was another advantage that we didn't really think about ahead, but it appeared to be an advantage, because there's been a lot of attention for this album, which is what more than anybody could hope for, you know. So we're just a rock band, you know. We want to get out there and play.
no, but you're right. When this wave of albums that has been delayed comes out, and all these people want to do interviews, well, at some point, you know, you can't do 4 interviews a day, so you're going to have to pick and choose. And
Yeah.
Some of the bigger bands are going to, you know, the Bon Jovis and Aerosmiths and all those are going to go ahead of the line. Not to be rude to anybody, but that's, you know, it's sort of what happens. So this was a brilliant plan, and it's a brilliant album. I will ask you just one more thing of the past, and I know we've talked about Stalkers in Tokyo 100 times, and you talk about it all the time. It was remastered and remixed and put on. What box set was it put on? The Whitesnake Unplugged or whatever it was.
Yeah, Unzipped.
Unzipped, right?
Yeah.
Great box. All those box sets are fantastic. But just to bring me back to that day, because it was sort of this serendipitous, you know, it wasn't meant to be, and yet it's become an absolute cult favorite with the fans. Just bring me back to that day in Tokyo, or those days, and doing that stuff and working on those arrangements, and David's voice and your guitar on that is just, they just complement each other. It's like left and right. It's perfect.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it turned out to be one of my personal favorites too. And like you said before, it's really interesting how the circle came about, that Ronnie started singing when he heard Stalkers in Tokyo. He told me he didn't even know that that Whitesnake was an, you know, electric rock band. He thought it was just a duo when he heard it, you know. And so that was pretty funny. That day was a lot of fun, because David and I were actually in Japan for promo and to do a radio show for about, I think it was about 60 winners of a prize, a radio prize or something, and it was for the best of album, and that was the one that we toured on with Warren and with Rudy at the time that we talked about earlier. So there needed to be promo done for that album. So David and I went to Tokyo and some other countries to do some acoustic promotion. Oh wait a minute, no, I'm wrong. It was for the Restless Heart album because
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
because you do. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4 songs from Restless Heart, right? Can't Go On, Too Many Tears, Don't Fade Away. Right, 4,
yeah.
3 songs.
Yeah, something like that. And about a split second of Burning Heart. David couldn't remember the lyrics, but it was a live radio show, and afterwards we realized, well, it's going to be bootlegged of the yin yang, you know, because it was with a good sound on Japanese radio. So David had a brilliant idea. He said, you know what, well, let's go into the studio tonight and just update the mix a little bit, because of course, you know, you have to take out like certain crowd thingies or whatever, even though I think it sounds to me like the whole show is in there, including the crowd, that David of course plays brilliantly, as he always does. He makes everybody feel it's like it's in his living room, you know. So there was a lot of interaction with the crowd, and we were just really relaxed, because playing acoustically is just a relaxed thing, you know. You should like two Boy Scouts at the campfire, you play your songs. And so in the evening we went back to a studio and spent about an hour or something to top and tail the sound, and that was it, you know. We left I think the next day, or we did a bunch of interviews and had some great sushi and some sake, and got the fuck out of there, you know. And then we did a few of those shows in other countries, I think in Poland, England, another couple of countries. Ever since, occasionally we've talked about maybe, you know, doing some more of that stuff eventually, I don't know, but I definitely want to do it with Ronnie. Ronnie loves those songs and he can sing them scarily well, you know. So I just love doing acoustic stuff. With Moon Kings we did an acoustic album as well, actually recorded on Jan's farm, because it was such a drought in Holland that season 2 years ago. You couldn't leave the farm for an hour, you know.
And it's a tranquil kind of environment, but yeah, you've got to do it either with Ronnie or with David, and we'll finish on this because you've got to go enjoy the day in France. But what has David Coverdale meant to you, both personally and professionally?
Personally, David always called me his illegitimate brother. We've always had, from day one, when we first met was in Holland, when the older Whitesnake, the 70s Whitesnake, and this was in early 80s, the first Vandenberg album was about to come out, and David invited me to come to a Whitesnake show in Utrecht, where a couple of years later we played the stadium when Steve Vai was in the band. And we had an immediate connection, and we decided to stay in touch, because he invited me to join Whitesnake, but I couldn't, because the first Vandenberg album was about to come out. I couldn't, you know, leave the whole thing behind, even though I was a huge fan of David and Whitesnake, you know. So it was quite a strange decision to make. And we've kept a brotherly friendship ever since. Musically, I've learned a lot from working with David and playing all those shows worldwide with Whitesnake in the biggest stadiums and in the weirdest countries, you know, like East Bloc countries, Poland, Russia especially was quite an experience. You know, you have to be like in those days. Right now, of course, it's westernized a lot more, but in those days, you had to be some kind of a James Bond to.
You spent a lot of the 90s in Russia. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, Whitesnake in Russia video on YouTube and stuff, and great sounding shows, by the way.
It was fantastic. I mean, one of the shows I remember, two cops on horses drove right through the crowd in order to maintain people to stay a little bit relaxed, or there was a fight or whatever. But I've never ever seen the combination of military men in their uniform in the crowd, beautiful girls taking certain bodily parts out of their t-shirt, and at the same time cops driving into the crowd and their horses. Man, it was like being part of a movie that you didn't audition for.
All while you're singing "Is This Love," and it's just like, wait a minute. Is this love? The batons come out, the horses go charging. God. On that, Adrian, of course, we will show it again over here. Whoops, there we go. Vandenberg 2020 out now. Ronnie Romero, just fantastic. The guitar playing is fantastic. The whole band is fantastic, as we say in Montreal. And as you say in France, merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup to you too, man.
And we will do this again soon, and we will get you to North America, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I'd love to, man. Take care.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Bye-bye now. Perfect.